Welcome, everyone, to Leadership in Quarters podcast, the interview series, where leaders come to share their perspectives of different leadership topics. I'm Josh Selden, and today's guest is Charles Browne. A little bit about Charles. He helps high-consequence leaders thrive in demanding roles by mastering executive presence, decisive leadership, and peak performance under pressure. With a career spanning nuclear engineering, fast attack submarines, corporate leadership, and high-performance coaching, he brings a unique blend of precision, discipline, and human behavior expertise to the leadership development. He's the author of The Pursuit of Identity and Purpose and a certified nice guys coach. Charles has coached over 200 clients, helping them transition from reactive, hesitant decision-making to calm, confident leadership in the face of extreme pressure. His lead coach program, which stands for Leadership, Excellence, and Development, is designed for emerging executives, entrepreneurs, and leaders navigating high-stakes transitions. Charles's insights are rooted in behavioral science, human performance principles, and real-world leadership challenges, making him a sought-after mentor for those struggling with confidence, imposter syndrome, and high-pressure decision-making. Whether coaching executives, business owners, or leadership teams, his focus is on better decision-making, faster growth, and leadership mastery without burnout. So Charles, welcome.
Barney, thank you so much.
Very excited to have you here and super excited for the topic that we've got today, going over imposter syndrome. So ready to jump in when you are.
Yeah. Imposter syndrome, when most people talk about it in context, it's usually at work. It's usually in their careers. But truthfully, if you really put yourself under a microscope, if you're having issues with imposter syndrome, you're having imposter syndrome throughout all phases of your life, in your personal life, in your friend circle, in your interpersonal relationships, in your romantic relationships. There's definitely a part of you that feels like an imposter. And the basis of that whole premise will start in the professional realm. It starts with this idea that I'm not qualified to be here. I'm not senior enough to be here. I'm not pedigreed to be here. And so if you carry that now on the other side of that coin into your personal life, I'm not good enough to be with this person. I'm not as successful as my friends. All these self-doubts. And when I put it in that context, what that really sounds like is low self-esteem. It sounds like I'm just not good enough. So the way that I approach imposter syndrome is it's real easy to put yourself in that boardroom and kind of talk through that and say, what is it about that? And stand up straight, put your shoulders back, take a couple of deep breaths, right? Those are all band-aids. The root cause of why you feel that way is you don't know what you bring to the table. You don't know what you bring to the relationship. You don't know what value you bring to your friends and family and to any situation. So when I approach imposter syndrome, I don't even really address imposter syndrome, just like I don't address low self-esteem and I don't address public speaking. You can get 100 books on each of those topics and they're all band-aids. They're all talking about these strategies to trick yourself into feeling like you belong there. When in reality, the work that I do is let's go inside, let's go deep, let's go way down to what makes us who we are. So when I work with someone who, expresses feelings of either low self-esteem or imposter syndrome, it's, okay, why don't you feel like you belong? Because this person is this and that person's that, and they did this one and they did that. Yeah. But what do you bring? And this is a little bit of a Star Trek society and Star Trek philosophy here, but I truly believe that the motto for my practice is that everyone has value. I've built my entire practice on it. I've reconstructed my life on that precedent. And so when you're really struggling with imposter syndrome, what you're really struggling with is your identity. You don't know your worth, you don't know your value, and you don't know what you bring to the team. So the real important and the really valuable and the really high leverage work is, who am I? And what do I do better than anyone else? And the answer to those questions are, what are my non-negotiable values? What does my emotional needs profile look like? Don't think about it from the perspective of certifications and degrees and experience. It's not a resume. What you bring to life isn't a resume. What you bring to life is a perspective and a set of experiences that are unique to you. I'll take a breath there because I see you nodding along, which is great.
It gives me a lot to think about. I immediately think of kind of the psychology side of it, where I wonder as you speak, how do you get those people to focus on themselves versus everything else? I feel like people in that zone are thinking, hey, I've got all of these external influences that are causing me to be in this situation. And I have to imagine it's very difficult for them to stop thinking that way and start focusing internally. How do you get them to make that shift?
Yeah, some of it is a little bit of coaching cliche, which is you've got to put your own oxygen mask on before you can help anyone else.
Gotcha.
And so that shift of getting a client, listen, if somebody's called me, they know they have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you're buying a bunch of self-help books and you're surfing Amazon and you're watching a ton of videos and you're listening to this podcast, you know that something's not quite right. You're not performing up to your potential. Something's holding you back. So you're looking for an answer, which that is 51% of the problem right there. So if you're there and you're listening to this podcast or you're reading the books and you got a stack of them next to your nightstand, whatever the case is, good. Because again, I can't do these without referencing either Metallica or movies or something, but G.I. Joe said that knowing is half the problem, right? So there you go. And so knowing that there's a problem and searching for that problem, like good on you, because we are all unique. And because of those unique experiences, you may be experiencing your feelings as imposter syndrome, but the core root cause might be different than mine. So when you're talking to someone, and this is, listen, one of the most important things we can do as human beings, in the limited time we have here is spend your time working on that internal locus of control. Okay. Internal and external locus of control. That is the difference maker from people who are sleeping in the matrix and just going through the motion and pursuing other people's goals and doing what they think is supposed to be what they're supposed to do. That's an external locus of control. They said, if I do these things, then I'll get this result. Let me pursue their goal. Let me win their prize. And then they wonder why they're dissatisfied with their life. People with an internal locus of control, this is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is what I think is important. And these are the goals that I'm going to pursue. So to more directly answer your question, yes, it absolutely starts with turning off that white noise, that external focus. And it happens actually pretty organically through my process, which is go through the exercise to define your non-negotiable values. That's important. That's what's important to you.
Right.
And that's the X on who you are, on drawing that box of who you are. And the Y is, what are my emotional needs? What lens do I see the world through? And so when you do those things, you have a really good starting point. You have a really good cornerstone of who you are as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, imposter syndrome just hasn't been an issue since I started making my decisions through that cornerstone.
Mm-hmm.
Is this important? Does this align with my values? Is this going to honor my values? Yes, it's going to honor my values. And is there a way that I can do it? A little peek behind the curtain, contribution, growth, and knowledge. Those are my emotional drivers. So is this thing going to align with my values? Yes. Okay. Is there a way that I can do it that allows me to contribute or grow or gain new knowledge? Yes. Okay, great. Then I'll do it. I'm in a space where I am inundated with advice, especially where my practice has grown to. I am a target for everybody and everything you could possibly imagine telling me exactly what I need to do. But they messed up because they don't realize that I have the decipher code. So when that comes in and they're promising me all this significance, or they're promising me all this variety and uncertainty, you're barking up the wrong tree because that doesn't resonate with me.
Right. It's such an interesting way to think about it because I feel like, especially in the professional world, which is where I hear imposter syndrome all the time, is it's that external locus that you talk about because you're trying to achieve the goal somebody else set. You're trying to move up in a company that your promotion and your worth is determined by other people. And so you're always looking externally and you're very rarely first looking internally to say, is what I'm doing and is what they want me to go do aligning with my own values, like you said, your value drivers. So it's a very interesting way to look at it that I don't think I've looked at before.
Excellent.
I do have a question that you made me think of. What, in your experience, are the type of people that you normally see imposter syndrome with? Is it a type of person that you can pick out a crowd and say, I know their personality type, there's a good chance they're experiencing this? Or is it pretty evenly, distributed across the board?
Yeah, not to repeat, but if you have an external locus of control, you're struggling with this every day. you're not happy with your life, you're really conflicted, you're feeling very disenchanted with the world because you're doing exactly what you just described, which is you're living somebody else's life. You're pursuing other people's goals and you're trying to live by their standards. So generally, you're an unhappy person. I will say that if your emotional needs profile is such that you seek a high level of significance and you are in a very challenging field, very technical field, or medical, legal, tech, high tech fields like cutting edge tech fields, those are very highly competitive, very hierarchical organizations, which definitely predispose themselves to pushing people to do more than they want to. So there's another side of imposter syndrome that, time permitting, we need to talk about this idea of I'm not quite ready to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. That's a different discussion about imposter syndrome. But right now, doing what you don't really want to do because you feel pressured or compelled to do it, that absolutely happens in those fields and in those organizations that strongly and heavily reward that. I see a lot of problem with that because it's not necessarily a results-based award. It's more of an action-based reward, which is, hey, you did something and it completely blew up, but that's what we like to see. That sets well with some people. They're like, oh, good, it wasn't a graded quiz. But other people are like, my work and the quality of my work matters to me very much. And I'm very embarrassed by the results of that thing. And now they're pushing me to do it again and an even bigger role. That is someone who is absolutely uncomfortable. They're squirming in their seat every day and they're just headed for burnout. I'll be honest with you. So the type of people are those who are most susceptible to external influence and who don't have a clear vision of what they want in their own life. The stick in the river kind of thing. They're just floating around and getting pushed one way or another. Their partner or their spouse might say, oh, you should do this and we should move here and you should take this job and this is a new field and you should do this. And I have the capacity, I have this degree that says I can do that, but is it what I really want to do? That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you have these two different factors weighing on you, two different external factors. You have your home life and your professional life, and a lot of times they conflict with each other because, like you said, you may not like what you're doing, but you've obviously got the work pressure that pushes you to continue doing that. But then if you go home and you're the breadwinner and you go to your family and say, hey, I don't like what I'm doing, and they say, we can't not have you working or else we can't live, it also ties you into this unwinnable situation, which may lead to the imposter syndrome also.
Yeah. If you're living somebody else's life, you're going to win prizes that you don't want.
Exactly.
That's what happens.
And that's not going to drive you to want to do more.
Exactly. And not to make it about me, when I discovered these things and realized these things and really turned my life around and started making different decisions, that's where the rubber meets the road. Every day we make thousands of decisions. Every one of those decisions is either more in alignment or less in alignment with who I am as an individual, with my identity. And I started to make more and more decisions that are aligned with my identity. And I didn't change jobs. I was in the same job at the time. I was a manager of projects. So I had a group of about 8 or 10 project managers, another 8 or 10 construction managers, and about 15 or 20 construction superintendents who answered to me. And I had a colleague as well. But the point being, I didn't change jobs, but I changed this.
Right.
And I changed the focus of my decisions and the performance of that group, the buy-in of that group, the morale of that group, my own performance, my own morale. Nothing else changed except that I made different decisions every day. And I chose to focus on the things that were important to me, which, I don't want to bring them up because then it's going to sound like a recipe for how to have success. The real secret to the recipe was I made decisions that were in alignment with who I was as an individual. And since then, after that, offered promotions, promoted again, moved to another department, became a deputy director of the project management office. Wow. Why? I was doing the same job. I have the same degrees. I have the same certification. I have one more year of experience. But on a career of 30 years of experience, one more year did not. What made the difference was how I showed up and where I chose to focus my energy. And for me, where I chose to focus my energy was everyone has value. So I looked at this team of 30 odd people plus everyone else who interacted with us on a daily basis. So hundreds of people. And I chose to say that every one of those people has value. and I approached those problems differently. And I walked into those rooms differently, looking to be basically a servant leader. Like, what's
Right.
the problem? Let me see if I could deconflict this. That person just doesn't look like they're being appreciated. What do they bring to the table? Oh, nobody knew this about them. And everything changed from that perspective. No matter what position you're in right now, I would absolutely bet good, hard, cold cash that just changing the way you show up changes your performance, changes how you're perceived by your company. And you don't have to necessarily pursue their template, pre-made award. You can win your own awards.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't realize that everybody feeds off their leader's energy. And so if you're in that situation like you talked, where you're down and you're not serving yourself and your own values and you're not exuding that energy of, frankly, that you want to be there, nobody else is going to really feel it either. And when you flip the script like you're talking about and looking at it differently and energizing yourself, I feel like it's got a twofold approach. You have the people that are working for you see that and they're like, oh, this guy enjoys what he's doing and feels like it's the right thing to go do, then we do too. And then now you have the energy to be that servant leader to go and take care of them also and really tie into EQ as opposed to the IQ side, which I feel like is more and more important these days than it has been, to make sure that we're taking care of them also.
Yeah, absolutely. In my lifetime, at least, I can't really pick a time where leadership was more important and more necessary than ever. And it is right now, given the divisiveness of our executive leadership.
Yeah,
It's just that then you have to push that leadership. You have to fill that void
right.
from below, which is
Exactly.
us, which is people who are interacting with each other every day. And it's a horrible thing. We wouldn't wish this on anyone. You just having these kind of stressful times, but every one of those times is an opportunity and people do rise to the occasion. And I'm going to give myself the little sticker for saying, yeah, I'm stepping right into it and I'm trying to help as many people just like you are, trying to help as many people as possible to get through this and not just survive, but hopefully thrive and use this as an opportunity for change.
Mhm. So, how do you find the people in the middle? And what I mean by that is, as you've talked, I realize you've got the people who probably don't have imposter syndrome. And I don't know how prevalent those people are, right? And then you've got the people who are 100% aware they have it. And they're the people that do the research and reach out to you and do all these things. And then you've got the people in the middle who are probably feeling it, but their teams and their leaders don't really realize that. And so we have these people on our teams that are walking around kind of questioning, should I be here? Am I in the right role? Am I as good as they tell me I am? Or whatever their thought process is. Without us knowing and without them being so obvious as to ask for help or to research it, how do you approach and find those people?
Yeah, yeah. So a lot of my technical background bleeds over into my coaching. I'm absolutely a huge proponent for EQ. It is a learnable skill. Develop your emotional intelligence. It's going to take you further than anything. But I draw from the technical world quite a bit. And
Mhm.
one of the trainings and certifications and programs that I went through that significantly changed the way I see the world was my Lean Six Sigma training.
Hmm.
And so I went through a year, maybe 14-month long process to earn my black belt. And then after that, I went through more training to design for Six Sigma and earned a master black belt.
Wow.
But what's important about that is the way you see the world. And I don't want to turn anybody off, but this is a superpower, I promise. It's
Yeah.
not cynical. It's a superpower. When I look at a client, when I meet a client, when I meet a person, even if I'm just having a conversation with someone,
Mhm.
I look at them like they are a corporation, like they are a process. Because frankly, we all are. We are all a process. Inputs come in, we do something to that input and we make a decision and we make some kind of an output. Just a little bit robotically, I can say that we're a process. I can see human beings as a process.
Mhm.
So in any process, if you apply Lean Six Sigma tools to that, you can improve that process. You can eliminate waste, you can improve quality, you can input throughput. And that's what I've done for myself. I've optimized my life, but not in a clinical, cynical way,
Mhm.
in a quality of my decisions. I have cleaned my lens. So when inputs come in, I know exactly how I'm seeing them and what perspective and then what goes out. But anytime you're going to improve a process, the most important thing to do is capture the as found.
Right.
Don't start turning dials and knobs and flicking switches and speeding things up and slowing things down and putting in shims. But you have to get the as found. So everybody right now who isn't sure, who's in the middle, who's starting to feel a little bit of that conflict,
Hmm.
and really a pretty good indicator in this is go ahead and look at your resume now. How many times do you change jobs? And you might have perfectly good rationale for that. They were this and it wasn't that, and this was a better opportunity. Okay. And that's fine. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm not going to call anyone out. You know what I mean? But if you're changing jobs all the time because the grass is greener, green grass is a pretty good indicator that something's not right in your life.
Hmm.
There's a misalignment and there's a conflict, and you're trying to solve it at a different company with a different boss in a different industry for a couple dollars more. Again, external locus. I don't feel right. I'm not being fulfilled, but I'm going to fix it from the outside and I'm just going to change. So that's a pretty good indicator. But do the as found. And here's how I do that: my values exercise, my needs exercise. And then you have a list of, independent of everything and everyone else, these are the things that I say are important to me. Okay, now make two more columns and say, all right, these are all the things that honor these things, and these are all the things that violate those things.
Hmm.
And then start filling in that chart. Me, just real quick: adventure, collaboration, humor and fun, right? Those are a few of my values. So I write those down. And then I look at them through the context of my entire life, or I can really niche down and say, okay, at my day job, is there any adventure in my day job? And I have to define what adventure means to me, because your definition, my definition, our listeners' definitions are all very different. But I've defined it and I say, no, I have no adventure at work. Is there a violation? Yes. I'm on this really strict schedule and it's these days a week. And okay, next. Humor and fun. Do you have anybody at work that you can actually just relax with and enjoy yourself? Yeah, there's this one guy, but we're constantly getting in trouble for it. So there's a violation that I do have fun, but I'm always pushing it. So you can
Right.
go through this in your entire life. And I promise you, here's the formula for happiness. Ready?
Mhm.
Happiness equals add up all those honors minus all those violations. And if you have more violations in your life than honors, you are miserable. I promise you. But here's the trick: don't go back and try to fill in that honors column. If you really want to make an impact on your life and make an effect on your life, start eliminating those violations, but do it in an intentional way by saying, I can't be in this environment anymore because of this value, not because I just don't feel right. So
Right.
those people in the middle, they're feeling that anxiety, they're feeling that conflict, but they don't know where it's coming from. 100% do an assessment. Do an as found. Don't put yourself under the pressure of, I've got to change a million things in my life. Don't, because your subconscious is going to work against you and it's going to block shit and it's going to make everything biased and you're not going to see any solutions at all. It's going to shut down the creativity centers. Just do an impartial as found. What does my life look like right now?
Right.
And then you have something a little bit more tangible to review against.
Hmm. That is such an interesting way to think about it, because I feel like I live and breathe Six Sigma and lean manufacturing in my, professional environment. So my thought process always change one variable at a time. How do you know what root cause is if you're changing five things? If five things fix the problem, which one of those five things did it? And to your point, you look at a resume and you see somebody's job hopped every year. And the reason they're job hopping every year is because they haven't gone database, they've gone feelings based. And the way you've laid this out makes perfect sense to me, because if you don't know what your negatives are and you don't know what the data is behind that and what those actual actions are that are making you unhappy, you're blindly throwing a dart at a board hoping the next place is going to fix it. But if you don't know what you're asking them to fix, then more times than not it doesn't, and then you just continue that cycle.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a very cool way to think about it.
So another thing that we learned then is spend 95% of your time and effort defining the problem. So many people come to me with, I need help with this thing. Okay, what makes you say that? But why do you feel that way? And why do you believe that? And why do you believe, right? Five whys.
Yep,
And
exactly.
ultimately, what they've done is they've chosen a safe or acceptable solution to a completely different problem. I worked with this one organization, and it's an industrial setting. So there's a lot of piping, and some of that piping is hot and some of that piping is cold. So it's lagged, it's insulated.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And operators are running around stepping on that lagging to reach valves and to reach, and it crushes that insulation, and it basically makes the insulation void.
Right.
Because what insulation does is it traps air. And then, okay.
Yep.
So they spent $275,000 on a safety at heights program to teach operators how to work safely at heights. Now, they had already implemented it. They had rolled it out probably a month before I got there. And the operations manager said, yeah, if you want to do something for me, go out, do an assessment and see how they're doing. Let me look at your safety record. How many people have fallen? Nobody's fallen. Nobody's gotten hurt. Then how can you say this is a safety issue? Because they're doing this thing that I asked them not to do. But here was my point. Every pipe that was being stepped on was between 2 and 3 feet off the floor, which basically means everything that was being operated was at that like 10 to 11 foot.
Right.
And what we know about 10 to 11 foot is it's this far out of reach.
Yep.
It's close enough that I can reach it, but it's not so far that I think it's worth going to get a ladder. That's what it was. The problem was not that people didn't know how to work safely at heights. The problem was, this is a pain in the ass. I'm in a rush. It's not worth going all the way over there, bringing a ladder over here to climb up to get that extra 6 inches or extra foot of reach that I need.
Yep.
So for free, I went to the machine shop, grabbed 2 valve handles and a rod, and had a welder weld them together with a couple of fingers on there. Now you have this extended valve operator where you can, nobody ever stepped on lagging again. So they spent $275,000 to fix a problem that they did not have.
Right.
Because they wanted a quick solution. And what they saw was people are climbing on stuff. We have a safety at heights problem. No, you don't. No, you don't. You have a convenience problem. You have a schedule pressure problem. Correct tool for the correct problem. So to your point, a lot of people will come to Barnes & Noble or Amazon or us and say, this is what I need. I just need help with my confidence. Why do you feel that, why aren't you confident? It's the wrong question. And people were so tuned to just plug in a quick solution that they go in this cycle over. And psychologically, like I said, they pick the acceptable solution, which is, yeah, I just need to join Toastmasters and I'll be good.
Yeah, it's so funny how difficult it is to get people to realize that you can't solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is, if you're not very clear on that. And what we always talk is, I've got a 3-year-old at home, and you have to approach it like you're talking to a 3-year-old, because you're going to tell them something and they're going to go, why? And until you get to that point where you really know what the driver is. So very interesting. I really appreciate all your time. The thoughts and experience that you shared for Imposter Syndrome is extremely valuable. And I've done an episode on my audio podcast on Imposter Syndrome. I've researched it to make sure I can at least support my group if they have it. And you've given me completely different things to think about, which is why I love doing this, because I am not the expert in anything. It's jack of all trades, expert of none. And so I love interviewing people who are the experts, who can give a different thought process and a different approach to these topics. Before we go, is there anything else that you want to share with the listeners?
No, I think we nailed it. I really do believe that every one of these listeners, every one of you has value. Figure out what that is. Figure out what your value is, what is unique about you and what you bring to society. And man, watch your life change. Watch your life change.
Perfect. Thank you again for the listeners. You can contact me at leadinquarters@gmail.com. We've got the YouTube page where this is, and the Facebook page at leadinquarters, and the Instagram at leadinquarters. If anybody has any questions about Charles, I'll have all of his information on the page in the description as well, and in the blurb that we'll put out on all of the social media. So please contact us. But Charles, again, thank you so much for all of your insight. Really appreciate it. I love when I can leave these things and just think differently. And that's really what drives me, obviously the people side of it, and then what drives me to grow and think differently. Really appreciate everything you brought today.
Excellent. My pleasure.
Thank you so much.